Hi, everybody. This is David Nevins for Citybiz List, and today we continue with a series of conversations that we're having on behalf of an organization called the Bridge Alliance. And the theme is repairing America's broken democracy. So we all have a little bit of work to do with that, right? And for those who want to learn more about the Bridge Alliance, I can tell you that if you go to their website, and you ask, well, what do they want to do? The first sentence, I think, is very telling. And so they're there to attempt to fix our dysfunctional and suffocating partisanship of our current political system. So I think most of us agree with that too, but we all have a little bit of work to do in that regard. So I'm thrilled today that our guest is John Sarrouf, with an organization called Essential Partners. And you've read about him prior to opening this video attachment. But John, welcome, first of all. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us. This is great.
And so, John, tell us a little bit about your very impressive background and the work of Essential Partners. So let's just begin with that.
Great. Well, Essential Partners has been around for about 31 years now, doing this essential work of helping to bridge the divide here in this country and all over the world. So it really was there at the beginning of this movement of bridge builders and is still here helping communities at the community level develop their own capacity, and leaders and business leaders, community leaders, universities, colleges, schools, to help their community build the capacity to. We really envision a world that is strengthened by our differences and connected by trust. And I just want to emphasize, we are living in a world that has difference. We have political, ideological, identity differences, regional differences, but we believe that those can be our strengths. Those can be the things that actually make us a more dynamic, creative, resilient community organizations. And so if you use those as part of your strength and build trust with those, then we can heal this country. We can heal the divides in our country.
We used to be called the Great Melting Pot, right? And yet the trust, a great word that you used, among us is, if not broken, very much in jeopardy today. So how is Essential Partners working on fixing that? I know you personally, and I'd like you to talk about your own background a little bit too. You spent a lot of time in conflict resolution, so I guess it's fair to say what you're talking about.
Well, yes. That is the work we do. I'm trained as a mediator and facilitated dialogues between police and community, the Israeli-Palestinian conversations within denominations, within cities where there's some real serious conflict going on. Even in the international setting, our organization has worked in post-Civil War reconciliation. So yeah, when people say, can we in this country reconcile? Can we get over our divides? Well, first of all, we have to. And second of all, yeah, sure, this is what the world does. The world sometimes has a difficult time, seeing its way to not getting into conflicts. But after we're in a conflict, we have to repair those relationships and build trust. So how do we do that? Part of that is creating a space for people to rehumanize each other, see each other anew, and build a conversation that allows people to talk about what they really care about, what's really important to them, and to see and understand that in the other, and begin to see that we have a lot more in common than we have different, and that our differences are part of our strengths. So if you can change the conversation and change the way people are talking to each other, you change the relationship, you change the community, and you change what's possible for that community to do together.
It seems to all be you and others have shared essentially a similar theme. It's about communication and listening and trust and respect, none of which do we have a sufficient amount of today. I know you've had a lot of successful work in communities across the country. Share with us some examples of that, if you would.
Yeah, sure. So there's a great example. Right after 2016, Representative Elijah Cummings was looking out at his community and saying, well, we've got to do better. I mean, our communities are fraying. And he went to a group of interfaith leaders in Columbia, Maryland, and he said to them, it's up to you. I mean, really, who has the trust to call the community together? You as interfaith leaders have the trust to call people together, and from all different denominations. And they got together and they invited essential partners to come down and to train. In that very first year, we trained 45 facilitators. And they each facilitated circles in 6 different religious groups. And hundreds of people came together to talk about their lives in Columbia together and what their vision for a life in a thriving community looked like across their racial and religious ideological differences. That group grew from that, and they now have 55 congregations. They're in their 4th year of dialoguing. We just finished. Those people are still working together in reading groups together. They are worshiping together. They are educating their children together. And now we have 2 things that I want to highlight here, David. They have relationships that are strong enough to be resilient when a difficult thing comes along. And I'll just give you one quick example of a really beautiful example. When the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh had the awful tragedy happen, and the rabbi in Columbia went to have a memorial service, a service in sort of support for their community and for the community in Pittsburgh. She reports that she had to have 2 services, one inside the synagogue and one out in the parking lot, because all of the people that showed up couldn't fit in. That's the kind of deep bonded relationships that comes out of that work. The second thing is that they now have, after 4 years, over 100 trained facilitators, right? Those are now people who can be called on when anything happens in that community. So our dream is to have relationships that are strong enough to be creative and dynamic in the best of times, resilient and peaceful in the most difficult of times, but also a group of people who can be called on by leaders at every level to come out and hold space for those difficult conversations that we know that we'll need to have, because our differences aren't going to go away. Conflicts aren't going to all of a sudden disappear. It's how we deal with them. Do we have the capacity to do that? And that's our vision for the country.
It's very well put, but far too often it takes a tragedy like the one you mentioned in Pittsburgh and others, sadly, to bring us together. You didn't know this, but though I am interviewing you today from West Palm Beach, Florida, Congressman Cummings, may he rest in peace, was a good friend and was my congressman for a number of years, and he did much to bridge divides in Maryland. And I'm sure you're familiar, John, with his program that took many inner city minority youth to Israel every year and so forth.
He told a story during one of the talks that we gave together down there about how he was supported by a pharmacist. He'd gone to, he was a young kid working at a pharmacy, and it was a Jewish owner of the pharmacy who helped him envision a future for himself, helped him get into college to go to school for pharmacy, and used to send him $5 every week to support him as he was there. He told that story. It was so moving. I mean, he really lived out that kind of bridging, ethic that I think all of us need to have in mind.
So, John, again, totally agreed. Tell us, again, with essential partners and how you differ from other organizations and, kind of on the ground, how you're moving toward creating this, more peaceful, better working democracy and so forth.
Absolutely. Well, I think one of the things that I think is unique about the Essential Partners framework and approach is that it's both scalable and adaptable. Our work tends to have a lot of structure around it to help hold the most difficult conversations. So I can teach hundreds of people to facilitate some really difficult conversations in a fairly short amount of time, because the structure really holds that difficult conversation. You don't have to be a Jedi master facilitator in order to help people come together and see each other and humanize each other. At the same time, the work, if you learn the principles, are really adaptable. I mean, I was just talking to a fellow who's working in a disaster relief organization, who's on the ground helping communities. And he's using the dialogue work to help them envision how they're going to roll out their projects. This is being used in schools, in middle school and high school, in colleges. It's being used to talk about things like vaccine hesitancy. It's being used to talk about race and diversity, and all sorts of issues. So it's both scalable and adaptable. And the vision really is that if you can educate enough people in a community, give them the sort of capacity building tools to hold the conversations, then you've got a community that's dynamic and resilient enough. And then the work really has to be done on the local level, right? And so if we're going to think about how to heal a whole nation, well, we have to plant this kind of capacity in communities and then connect the communities to each other, right? Into a community of practice, so that one community is learning from another, so that something that's being done in Sheridan, Wyoming is being picked up and learned about in Jackson, Mississippi, and something that they're doing, with the police and community in Raleigh, North Carolina, is being learned about and applied in Columbus, Ohio. So that's the vision. Can we get enough communities doing this work with enough facilitators doing the work, and then connect them into a larger community of practice? And the other thing is that you've got to stay with it. This is not a one-off kind of work, right? We didn't get to this place overnight. This is a long time coming that we have to reckon with all of these divisions. And so it's going to take some investment. We think about 1-2 year investment by a community and by us in that community. And then the hope is that after that, they're giving us as much as we're giving them in terms of learning and understanding and community connection.
It sounds so logical, and you'd think today it would be so relatively easy, right? Given the technology that we have today and the ability, like we're doing today, to be 1,000+ miles apart and be Zooming and chatting as if we're sitting next to each other. And yet the divides that we have with one another seem to be as great as ever.
Well, that's the interesting thing about polarization, is that the further we get apart from each other, the more we realize the pain and the cost of polarization. And at the same time, the harder it is to engage in the depolarizing efforts and the humanization efforts. People say, well, I'm not sure that I want to sit down and talk to them. So there's a lot of groundwork that needs to be laid. And we do a lot of that. We do a lot of preparation work to get a community to that place where they're saying, okay, enough's enough. I don't think we can live with the divides that we have right now. You're right. I think technology gives us some opportunities that we didn't have before. I think that there are some opportunities we have to take advantage of, and people seeing each other in new ways. And actually, what's interesting is, we're being invited into each other's homes often. Right. I mean, right? I'm sitting there and I hear your kids in the background, or I, see a picture of somebody in the background, and that gives us some humanizing context for each other. It's not the worst thing that we have to be separated like this. I mean, right. God willing, this will get through this, and people won't have to suffer anymore. But there are some advantages to this.
No question. I mean, you're in cold Massachusetts, and love your scarf, by the way. And
thank you.
And I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt in West Palm Beach, Florida. So
I think you got the better end of the deal.
I did at this moment, for sure. Tell us, if you would, John, how our viewers can learn more about Essential Partners and get involved if they're so inclined.
Absolutely. You can go to our website, whatisessential.org. Whatisessential.org. And we have a lot of resources on there. Part of our work really is to create the best in this practice and to send it out to people to use. So we also have open enrollment trainings that people can come to. That's an advantage of being on Zoom. Everything's virtual right now, and it's still quite intimate, and the work seems to go quite deep. But you can go on. We have a training coming up in March 18th and 19th. So you can take an open enrollment workshop. We have also an opportunity for our facilitators to go into a company or to a school or to a city and to lead one day training, 2-day training to help people develop these skills. I mean, I think one of the things that we're seeing in the world is we've done a lot of work around, say, diversity and inclusion and bringing, different voices into an organization, into a company. We haven't necessarily invested enough in giving them the tools to live out the fullness of that diversity, right? And it can get us into troubles as leaders of organizations and communities. So we really encourage people, go look and see if there's either an open enrollment training to sign up for, or we do a free consultation. We'll give you a free hour to talk about the issues going on in your organization, help you brainstorm, think about it. And if we're not the right people for you, we will try to point you in the right direction. Our commitment really is to help people heal their organizations in whatever way they need to. So we do a lot of listening. And so please, reach out, and we'd be happy to set up a call.
And I have no doubt many of our viewers will indeed be doing that. John, you speak so articulately and passionately about the cause. So best of luck to you, John. Best of luck to Essential Partners. And again, to our viewers, this is part of an ongoing series, Repairing America's Broken Democracy. And I think we all agree that if it doesn't need a complete overhaul, at the very least, it needs a little bit of tinkering around the edges. So anyway, this is David Nevins on behalf of Citybiz List, and our guest today has been John Sarrouf with Essential Partners. John, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for doing this important work, and good luck with it.